grabbing at her and Amber with his free hand and trying to club them with the casted hand, that she said, "I punched him square in the face. I punched him square in the face." And they showed you a picture of the shiner that she had, that Mr. Depp had. Ms. Heard doesn't deny that. They're trying to say she's the abuser for defending herself and her sister from this animal who's running at them. This person that they claim couldn't possibly have done this because he had a hurt finger. Yet he could have done this. This is what Mr. McGivern said was rearranging her closet. I don't know what you all do when you rearrange your closets, but I hope it doesn't look like this. This is throwing a clothing rack down the stairs. This is knocking this over. This is what he did to rearrange her closet with his hurt finger that he couldn't possibly have hit Miss Heard with, they claim. That in and of itself, that destruction of property, even if he hadn't hit her that night, that's abuse. Imagine being married to someone and walking on eggshells so thick that you don't know if you set them off if that's what's going to happen. That's abuse. And it's disgusting. But sometimes he would apologize. He'd say, "I can't express how sorry I am for having stooped so low as to have spewed such vicious untruths for the sole purpose of hurting you. Grievous error, shameful." So he went in these cycles. He went in these cycles. She thought he could change for good. And when it was good, it was really good. But then sometimes things like December 15th came around, where she remembers him chasing her in the kitchen. She remembers him shoving her 2 or 3 times and sending her toppling over a Chase lounge and saying, "Do you really want to go again, tough guy?" And she looked at him and he balled up his fist, leaned back, and headbutted her square in the nose and pounded her head with the back of his fist so she couldn't breathe on that bed that we're going to see in a second, where she was suffocating in this pillow top. And she said, "This is when I thought I was going to die. He's going to kill me and he doesn't even know what he's doing because he's out of his mind." And these are the pictures that they claim. I don't know what they're claiming. I don't know if they're claiming she painted on the bruise. Oh, you weren't hurt badly enough, so therefore you're making it up? Look under her eye. And again, their theory is that all of this is a lie. All of this was some grand hoax. If this were a hoax, ladies and gentlemen, she'd have worse injuries than that. She'd really do it up. She took pictures as they existed when she could at the time of abuse. And yet Ms. Vasquez has the nerve to say, well, why didn't she videotape an incident of abuse? What, as she's being hit, she's supposed to somehow grab a video camera with one hand while she's defending herself with another hand? You heard her in one of the audio tapes talking about when she hit him as he was trying to barge at her and she got her feet caught under a door as he's coming after her. And of course, as Don Hughes testified to, victims of coercive control like this, they do try to appease their abusive partner and apologize for things that aren't their fault. So as you're coming at me, Johnny, and you push a door into me, and I have to hit you to get away, to protect myself, yeah, she did apologize for that because that's the cycle of violence. That's what victims do. Yet they continue to blame the victim. There's no evidence she painted on that bloody lip. And again, if we're talking about a hoax, the next day she went on James Corden and they say, well, you can't see any injury there, so it must not have happened. She would have to be the dumbest person in the world to say, I'm going to commit an abuse hoax, but let's do it the day before I go on national television. Let's do it the day before. But you heard Melanie Iglesias, her makeup artist, testify in great detail. And I didn't even understand half the terms about makeup that she was using. But she testified in great detail about exactly what she did to cover up those bruises. The red lipstick that she put to cover up the busted lip. You heard the testimony of that from a neutral party who said exactly what she did. She talked about how she looked at the color wheel to neutralize the bruising. They claim it was just an accidental headbutt. Well, no accidental headbutt rips out hair. They claim, oh, Miss Heard somehow used a pocket knife to cut this portion of the bed out to stage this. Well, I don't know if that's a pocket knife or not, but the only testimony in this trial about a pocket knife is Whitney Henriquez saying that Mr. Depp carried a pocket knife in his pocket every day. We all know where that, if it is a pocket knife, where that came from. I think one of the most telling things about this incident is the text he sent to David Heard, Amber's dad, 2 weeks later, where he says, I meant to send this to you a week or so ago. I'm sending it to you now. And he says, I forget if it's a text or an email, but you can look at DX580. He says, yes, I fucked up and went too far in our fight. Because as a result of that fight and the bruises that all of her family saw, the family refused to go to the Bahamas with them for Christmas. The family refused to go to the Bahamas for Christmas, and on that trip to the island, Mr. Depp kept passing out, and every time he passed out, he would dump a glass of wine on Amber's lap. And she didn't like that, and she yelled at him. And because it was in front of his kids, he got up. This is the one where Tara Roberts took the video, but she didn't show you the closet, she didn't show you the bathroom. And Amber says, while holding my neck, this is in the closet, he said, I'll fucking kill you if you ever speak to me like that in front of my kids again because you embarrass me. And then he took her into the bathroom, and she said, but this time, he grabbed my vagina, shoved his fingers inside me, but through my bathing suit, and held me there and asked me if I was so fucking tough. And then she ran out of the house. And to keep him away from her, that's when he claims, and she admits she threw something at him. She didn't know what it was. It's been testimony it was a can of mineral spirits that she claimed that hit Mr. Depp. And Mr. Depp is somehow the victim in that encounter? Come on. We talk about the train ride to Asia. You saw the pictures taken before they got on the train ride where Mr. Depp has the same shadowing under his eye that he does in the allegedly abusive picture. But in that picture, he held in that train ride, talk about a honeymoon, he held her up against the wall while she was trying to get his arms off her neck, and he was squeezing her neck against the railway car, and at some point, I pulled the lapel of his shirt, he rips the shirt off, and she woke up with the shirt around her neck and a giant knot in the back of her head. Let's fast forward to her birthday party just very quickly. He experienced terrible financial news that night. He came over, they got into a fight. There's been conflicting evidence about that. But Amber said, I hit the side of the desk, he chest bumped me, he fell to the floor, I fell to the floor, and when I got back up, he held me down by the shoulders, and that's when he grabbed her by the pubic bone and pushed her down. And you'll remember Ms. Vasquez showing her interrogatory answers where she details a lot of this and saying, nowhere in there does it say that. And Ms. Heard says it actually does on page 64 and pointed out to Ms. Vasquez exactly where it says that. That's abuse. It's sexual abuse. But we all know what Mr. Depp does when he experiences terrible financial news, or terrible news. He experienced terrible news that night on the way to the birthday party where both of his bodyguards have testified that he was either visiting his sick mom or getting a birthday present for Amber. And then we know what happens the day after his mother passed away on May 21st, 2016. And we're going to skip through a little bit of this now, and Elaine will talk about this in the context of the counterclaim, but these are the pictures afterwards. These are pictures that now they're claiming that, they must have been faked. There's been no testimony in this case that these pictures were faked. There's been no testimony that the marks you see on Amber's face, including this mark with a straight line from below her eye to the top of her temple that it lines up directly with the phone. There's been no testimony that those are faked. Mr. Depp went through the house. He destroyed pictures of her friends. That's abuse. Property destruction like that, in and of itself, is abuse. He destroyed her office. He destroyed her friend Rocky Pennington's preparation for the bead show that she was having. He spilled wine in the hallway that you'll notice the police denied. Oh, there was no spilled wine in the hallway. Well, even Isaac Baruch testified that he saw this in the hallway. And they said she never sent anything to her medical providers. These are the texts that she sent to her nurse, Erin Filati, the night that it happened. These are pictures of her in the courtroom. We're not going to play this right now, but you can listen to this. This is that terribly disturbing text of him in July of 2016 threatening to cut himself and telling, you cut me or I will. You all remember playing that. It was awful. It was awful. I'm not going to play it again. But it was horrible. That in and of itself is abusive. This is the document that Mr. Depp signed, the divorce agreement, where he says, signed in agreement with his signature, neither party has made false accusations for financial gain. He said that then. He could have fought this then, but he didn't because he knew that her allegations were true. But then he continued his campaign of humiliation. He says, I want her replaced on that WB film. Ladies and gentlemen, the facts are absolutely overwhelming of abuse. One time, That's all you have to remember. Mr. Depp simply cannot prove to you that he never once abused Amber. And if you don't know, you have to return a verdict for Ms. Heard. A ruling against Amber here sends a message that no matter what you do as an abuse victim, you always have to do more. No matter what you document, you always have to document more. No matter whom you tell, you always have to tell more people. No matter how honest you are about your own imperfections and your own shortcomings in a relationship, you need to be perfect in order for people to believe you. Don't send that message. That's what he wants you to send. So I'm going to quickly get to another point that you have to find in order to prove, or in order to rule for Mr. Depp. You would have to find that Ms. Heard made the statements with actual malice. Now, what Mr. Chu didn't tell you is that you have to find this by clear and convincing evidence. So this is much higher than the greater weight of the evidence standard that applies to the other claims, the other elements of the claim. Clear and convincing evidence is evidence that creates in your minds a firm belief or conviction that Mr. Depp has proved this issue. So if you believe that Ms. Heard did not act maliciously in writing her op-ed, then you must return a verdict for Ms. Heard, even if you think that he never abused her. But I'll quickly go over the evidence of this. The op-ed, you look at the words, it clearly wasn't a hit piece. She visited her attorney, Eric George, who testified by video that his objective was to make sure that there could be no meritorious claim that could be brought about this article relating to defamation. He gave Ms. Heard advice. She affirmatively followed all of it. So you cannot find that Ms. Heard met the clear and convincing evidence standard, given the testimony of Eric George, given the testimony of Terrence Doherty from the ACLU, when Amber went out of her way to ask her lawyer if it was okay. They will say it doesn't matter if she's lying, but even if that isn't, they will say that that doesn't matter if she's lying, but even that isn't true. Because again, keep in mind that if Ms. Heard wanted to be malicious toward Mr. Depp, the article would be very different. And I think it's interesting here, we'll talk about Mr. Waldman in a second, but that Amber utilized her attorney, Eric George, to make sure that she was